Chapter 21. The Sequence of Numbers. One of the most significant and deepest truths of life, of nature, of the universe, is that there is correspondence, fundamental correspondence everywhere. The stumbling block of science has been its separation of man, the observer, from the objects of his study and research. For he, the crowning work of creation, is an epitome of it, bearing to its component parts the same relations that the atoms of his body bear to one another. It is impossible for us to separate ourselves from the life about us, for we are a part of it, and bear the closest relationship to its manifold forms and manifestations. The soul, the connecting link between the body and its creator, is the medium through which all consciousness of that divinity and our close connection with the unchanging source of life is manifested. Now, the question arises, how is it manifested? You have been told that everything, all activity, every visible thing, is the result of tattvic vibrations, and that our physical bodies are gross, that is, visible effects of their ceaseless permutations and comminglings. The distinction gross is used in this connection always with the sense of being the antipodes, or direct opposite of the most sublimated or subtle. A visible effect, through a succession of ever-coarsening vibrations forming denser matter, of invisible forces, forces of so tremendous energy that the average mind is as yet incapable, wanting any standard of comparison, of realizing their power and effect. What you have already learned concerning the bonds of sympathy established by the tattvas has prepared you for the consideration now of all the links in the chain of causation, the analysis of which will enable you to answer in fullest detail and incontrovertibly the question, what is this relationship and correspondence? In answering which the first question is answered also. All this is made clear through study of the self, a septenary compound of principles which link the microcosm to the macrocosm by the same septenary chain through and by which all phenomena issue from the noumenon. The human body consists of 7 vehicles of expression, sheaves, bodies, or principles, as they are variously designated. The lowest of these in degree of density is the physical body, an aggregation of cells compounded by the grossest vibrations of the tattvas. But cells could not exist without molecules, nor molecules without atoms. And just as every process from the exterior to the interior of the cell is a gradation of refining motion, to forms and vibrations too subtle for the comprehension of man, so also is the structure of the human body. The sequence of numbers forges the links in this life chain, numbers ever repeating, ever reiterating, ever reproducing and recombining, constrained by the rhythmic law, the primary logoi emanating from the first cause. As from this first cause, which is unity, the Creator, Brahman, everything in the manifested world proceeds. The basic truth is that the law of unity is the keystone of the arch supporting, defining, and limiting all other laws and their activities. But since manifestation implies change, how does this law of unity act? Every act proceeds from an impelling influence, the power of thought, which is spirit in action. God thought, and instantly the vibrations of that thought, for us the first manifestation of force, began working in its affinity, or opposite, the mother principle of the universe, mula prakriti, or pradhana, homogeneous, undiscrete substance for which there are many names. It suffices for clearest understanding, however, to recognize it as the negative phase of spirit, and the root of matter, which is always negative to spirit. Thus even unity in action must have 2 phases, activity and existence being unthinkable. Otherwise, and these 2 aspects of the first cause are necessarily of different character, opposite poles the one to the other, hence give rise to diversity in unity. Whence arises the law of affinity, or sympathy, in opposites. Therefore, Pairs of opposites are to be held in mind as the basis of all activities, all change, all progress, and the beginning of numbers. The duad, without which the Holy Trinity were impossible. Affinity is the love principle which builds all worlds, while its opposite, hate, destroys. The opposite of unity is diversity, and the product of their interaction is a unit which differs from them. The Trinity, the three in one, or three aspects of the primary cause. The very beginning of cosmic manifestation was an unfolding of this threefold power, the Trinity, which was latent in unity. To put this in simple terms of everyday life, which should speak to every human heart in a voice that will forever echo the truth. Father, mother, and child are forever reiterating, reproducing the primary activity of the Holy Trinity. These aspects are defined in principles as will, wisdom, and activity. The will to do, the wisdom to conceive, the power to act. The ideas of all created things are inherent in this first utterance of supreme unity, which we recognize as the first logos, the expression or voice of God, who spoke the universe into existence. For the resulting vibrations are the Holy Spirit or creative medium. This first logos was sevenfold, and differentiated into the seven logoi, or creative potencies, the seven spirits, or gods, below the Trinity, corresponding to the vowels of speech, and acting through the septenary of vowel sounds. Thus sound and color and form correspond throughout nature. In the Book of Zion, see Secret Doctrine, Volume 1. It is said, this was the army of the voice, the divine septenary. These are called spheres, triangles, cubes, lines, and modulars. You will recognize these forms as identical with the tattvas, and it shows you that from the beginning of manifestation God geometrized. The harmony of the spheres, Pythagoras' voice of nature, is composed of these voices of the logoi, which correspond with the seven tones of the musical scale. They are the seven heavens, or angels, who sounded each one vowel, which, all combined together, formed a complete doxology. The sound whereof, being carried down to earth, became the creator and parent of all things that be on earth. The forces thus set in motion are the seven hierarchs of conscious divine powers, active manifestations of one supreme energy. In Hindu mythology, this stage of evolution is known as the creation of the gods, the sons of Fohot, or force. These personified forces are the positive aspects of the tattvas, the negative phases being the shaktis of the Hindu sacred books. Now, the logoi must be recognized also as the seven great rays from the Holy Spirit, or primal light. It is these seven forces, symbolized as the Elohim or seven spirits of God, the lower Sephiroth of the Kabbalah, which define the limits to the links in the chain of causation, establishing seven planes of manifestation, corresponding each with its primal ray and its vowel sound, and differentiated the one from the others by the character of its vibrations, that is, their form and rate, or number per unit of time, their velocity. The Western mind has little idea of the latent power in sound and consequently in words, numbers, and musical tones. But number underlies all form and guides sound. All life is manifested in numerical proportions and rhythmical motion. Motion, ceaseless motion, is a condition of all existence, and form determines its effect. But sound with its rhythm and accent, of which number is the expression, molds the form. Thus, the voice of God's sound shaped the vibrations of the first logos, which contained in itself the germs of the succeeding seven logoi. It is, perhaps, fortunate that we are forced to employ the Sanskrit nomenclature for the tattvas, because Sanskrit, being a pure, primitive tongue, is rich in onomatopoetic words like our cool, fiery, rustling, brilliant, scurry. there is great probability that the names of the tattvas bear a metrical relation to their signification, quality, and action on the gross plane of matter. Hence it is very important that they be correctly pronounced. To facilitate this, the accepted phonetic spelling, that adopted by the Sanskrit scholars who appreciate the need, has been strictly followed. And to give further aid, a glossary of all the Sanskrit words it has been necessary to use is appended to this book. The marvelous building and formative power in sound has always been recognized in Hindu religion and philosophy, and it has led the East Indian people to have an unshakable faith in the potency of their most sacred word. They believe the manifestating word of God is Om, and, being double in its pronunciation and triple in its essence, that it expresses every power of generation, preservation, and destruction. That is, correspondence with their Trimurti, Trinity, Brahma, the Creator, Vishnu, the Preserver, and Shiva, the Destroyer, all one in different aspects. Although there are hundreds of words in different languages signifying God, there must be some root thought, generalization, or common ground from which all the symbols spring. And that root thought, the primitive idea, reasons the Hindu, should be the common symbol. He, therefore, seeks his fundamental inner root sound, asking himself first, how sounds are uttered by the human voice, and then, what must have been the first sound? What organs are called into action? The larynx and the palate as a sounding board. Now, is there any word which contains in itself the basis of all sounds? Yes, agam, om pronounced like o in on, not like o in home, prolonging the consonant and holding the voice to one key, is such a word, and the only one. Analyzing its triple essence, the first letter, a, is the root sound, or key. In all tongues, it is the natural exclamation of emotion, whether of pain or joy, ah, and the first word the infant utters, and it is pronounced without touching any part of the tongue or palate. U rolls from the very root of the tongue to the end of the mouth's sounding board, and M brings teeth and lips together and closes mouth and sound. The three letters also symbolize the three worlds: physical, astral, or luminous, and heavenly, the latter embracing the other two. See glossary. Thus, Om is a fundamental word covering the whole phenomena of vocal utterance. As such, Swami Vivekananda pronounces it the natural symbol, the matrix of all the various sounds, believing that it denotes the whole range and possibility of all the words that can be made. All the religious ideas of India have been and are centered around this sacred word, so hallowed in many cults that its public utterance has been condemned when not forbidden. And this ban, you will now understand, arises from no mere superstition, but is based upon occult knowledge of the tremendous power invested in certain rhythmic sounds. I would caution you never to utter the word or discuss its profound significance in hostile or flippant company. Because, says any peasant, the sound that, working in the harmonious builds, working in the inharmonious destroys. And everything that is evil is tumultuous, while everything which is pure is harmonious. Building of the Cosmos, page 23. A Sanskrit mantra embodies in its words an essential virtue attributed to the rhythmic force of sound. And Mrs. Besant, addressing the Theosophical Society in India, explained that she used the teaching of the Upanishad, Mundaka, but not the Sanskrit tongue in the definite order of its syllables, which gives them the force of mantrams. She would not assume the responsibility of repeating the mantram form of Vedic shlokas in a mixed assembly where conflicting magnetisms were gathered. I have dwelt thus upon the importance of the spoken word as a caution to those thoughtless persons who frequently hold up to ridicule sacred words and subjects concerning the significance of which they are profoundly ignorant, and doing which they make for themselves very unhappy, that unerring law which adjusts effect to cause on every plane, which their companions and all those whom they influence share to a lesser degree. It is impossible to speak with too great emphasis here, for idle talk does more harm than the average mind can conceive, and hasty speech, the word that hurts, has ever to be atoned for. Forces that are uncontrolled control you, and out of this mystery emanates all the suffering and unhappiness in the world. Choose ye harmonious forces. Pythagorean philosophy taught that the substances of all things were represented by abstract numbers, which in a certain sense were the elements of the universe, and explained it. Every number, therefore, had its specific value and influence, and the Pythagoreans considered 7, or the heptagon, a religious and perfect number. It is called telesphorus because by it all in the universe and mankind is led to its end, and also because within the decade it has neither factors nor product. Plutarch says that Pythagoras maintained the earth was the product of the cube, fire, of the pyramid, triangle, Gaia, of the octahedron, and the sphere of the universe, of the dodecahedron. When you recognize the agreement between this theory and the Tatvic law, in the form of elemental vibrations, you will, perhaps, think with me that the moderns would better cease to scoff at the fantastic metaphysics of Pythagoras, and with humble spirit and open minds study his tenets. The number system of Pythagoras was based on the theory of opposites, by which alone creation and the activities of the cosmos can be explained. Numbers were divided into odd and even, and from their combination other numbers, and therefore all things resulted. He believed number was the basis of order and harmony in the cosmos, identified it with form, and endowed different numbers with their special virtues and powers. The Pythagorean categories, or fundamental opposites are 1. Limited and unlimited, 2. Odd and even, 3. One and many, 4. Right and left, 5. Masculine and feminine, 6. Rest and motion, 7. Straight and crooked, 8. Light and darkness, 9. Good and evil, 10. Square and oblong. The first 4 numbers corresponded respectively with a point, a line, a surface, and a cube. The point, 1, signified unity and harmony, or order, having position, and being analogous to the monad, spirit, or ego, was positive and bisexual, the number of origin and of reason. The line, 2, was analogous to the duad, an even number, unlimited, because it could be perpetually halved, negative and feminine, and represented matter, therefore the possibility of evil and brute force. A surface, 3, was analogous to the triad, or triangle, positive and masculine, and a cube, 4, to the tetrad, or tetractes, considered the symbol of the cosmos, because containing within itself the point, the line, the superficies, and the solid all essentials of form. Its mystical representation is the point within the triangle. 4 was also significant as the first square number, and as being the potential decade, or perfect number. Pythagoras compared 4 to a world that is self-moving. It contains in itself, and is, the quaternary. It was the number of justice, as was 3 of mediation. Great honor was shown to 3 by all ancient peoples, as, corresponding with the triangle, it was the first absolutely perfect figure, endowed with sacred significance as symbolizing the eternal, the first perfection, and the 3 kingdoms. Although the science of good and evil began with 2, which expresses all the contrasts in nature, day and night, health and sickness, heat and cold, light and darkness, etc. It yet was recognized as intimately connected with harmonic sound, because by doubling the number of string vibrations in a given unit of time, another tone is produced which sounds like the first, but differs in pitch the octave higher. 5 was called the nourisher, the generating and fostering sound, for it was believed that a fifth was the first of all intervals which could be sounded, and also it contained the first feminine or even number. 2. And the first masculine or odd. 3. Pythagoras discovered that the fifth and the octave of a tone could be produced on the same string by stopping at 2/3 and 1/2 of its length respectively. This gave the law that harmony depends upon numerical proportion, and the discovery is believed to have led to his whole philosophy of number. The octoad or 8 symbolizes the eternal and spiral motion of all things from the atom to cycles, and is symbolized in its turn by the caduceus. It manifests the regular in and out breathing of the cosmos under the direction of the 8 great gods, that is, the 7 builders or cosmic Dayan Chohans, identified with the 7 spirits, the voices, and the 7 angels of the stars, and the Holy Spirit, whence they emanated. 9 is the triple ternary, a number producing itself incessantly under all shapes and figures in multiplication. It is the sign of every circumference. It leads to a new dispensation and to revelation, and symbolizes the point of union with the higher self. Under certain conditions, by the law of opposites, it may be very unlucky. 10, or the decade, brings the digits back to unity and completes the Pythagorean table. Hence the figure 1 enclosed in a cipher unity within 0 was a symbol of deity, of the visible universe and of infinite vastness, and of man, the only creature who stood erect, as also of the primal activity of the positive and negative forces. In the books of Hermes, which Madame Blavatsky quotes, Secret Doctrine, Volume 3, 10 is the mother of the soul, life and light being therein united. For 1, man, is born of the spirit, and 10, of matter, and from their unity again the Trinity comes forth the soul. There is a famous Chinese arithmetical diagram called the Lo Shu, or the scroll of the river Lo, the invention of which is attributed to Fu Hai, who lived 2858 to 2738 B.C. It is a mathematical square from 1 to 9, so written that all the odd numbers are expressed in yang symbols, white dots, emblems of heaven, while the even numbers are expressed in yin symbols, black dots, the emblems of earth. Confucius, who was a contemporary of Pythagoras, used these same yang and yin symbols, with the already age-honored signification above given, and he taught that the transmutations and comminglings of these odd and even numbers corresponding, of course, with forces kept the spirit-like agencies of the cosmic world in movement. Thus the theory of opposites and of the fundamental relations of odd and even numbers was not confined to a brotherhood of fantastic metaphysicians in Greece, and is perhaps worthy of the serious consideration of modern scientists. The 20th century has not improved upon the Confucian code of ethics, and ancient wisdom is a vast storehouse of treasures for us. The 7-fold permutations of the tattvas was explained early in these lessons. Chapter 6. But you are now to understand that everything in nature responds to this number 7, a compound of 3 and 4, and the factor element in every ancient religion, because it is the factor element in nature. The most tremendous and baffling force in nature is the mysterious synthesizing power of the triad, the 3 in 1. It is the unity which in all the apparent confusion maintains harmony and order. This synthetic power is shared in only lesser degree by 5 and 7, and these 3 are most significant numbers for humanity. 7 is the master of the moon, for she is constrained to change her phase every 7 days. Thus she herself is without the 7, being acted upon by them. Blavatsky says. The 7 planets are not limited to this number because the ancients knew no others, but simply because they were the primordial or primitive houses of the 7 logoi. There may be 999 other planets discovered. This does not alter the fact of these 7 alone being sacred. What you know of planetary influences will enable you to recognize the houses as centers respectively of the separate creative forces, or logoi. Though invisible and inaudible to us in detail, the creative forces, in the form of rates of vibration which compound and dissociate the atoms and molecules, become in the synthesis of the whole audible to us on the material plane. The Chinese call it the great tone, or kung. It is the actual tonic of nature, recognized by musicians as middle far on the piano. Among the moderns, the great French genius, Balzac, recently classed with Napoleon and other history makers of the 19th century among the demi-fausses, or half-insane, was gifted with a Pythagorean insight into the mysteries of the cosmos. He wrote, "There is a number beyond which the impure cannot pass, the number which is the limit of creation. The unit is, the starting point of every product. The universe is the unit in variety. Motion is the means. Number is the result. The end is the return of all things to the unit, which is God." Chapter 22. The Sevenfold Constitution of Humanity. We have seen that proceeding from unity through its first uttered thought, the voice of God striking upon the waters of life, cosmic vibrations varied by sound, motion, and number, and restrained by unison and harmony, are the base and order of the universe. Never lose sight of the basic law that unity in action is dual, that in this fact lies the axial point of creation, as also the endurance of the universe. That right here, the ultimate of manifestation that man's intelligence can reach or comprehend, is the faux heart feeding the great dynamo which maintains the absolute rhythm of the great breath of all life. On every hand we have proof of these 2 opposed but complementary forces in nature. The traction and repulsion of these 2 phases of one substance, that is, the reciprocal activities of the positive and the negative, or the active and the passive, are the source of perpetual motion. While each phase is in its purest state, sympathy draws them together. When they are completely blended, antipathy results and they fly apart. Thus satiety follows rapture and prepares the way for further rapture. The 2 phases ever building and disintegrating, mingling and separating. This duality exists in every differentiality from the first cause, and therefore in every atom. This is the first bond of union and sympathy, the phase of motion. It is this that maintains the conservation of energy. And the next is the form, like seeking like, fire feeding fire, water blending with water, oil with oil. And from every duad is derived a third, which is the synthesis of the triad. As the 7 sounds, the tones, or voices of the logoi emanations from the Holy Spirit of the primal Trinity define through their differentiations the limits of causation and, therefore, the links in the chain. Through their activities, they established corresponding planes of existence, or manifestation, which are called the sheaves of Brahman. It is Brahman, the Creator, who is undefinable, the one breath of the whole universe, who set these limits to creation, without whom there could be no life. And not till the souls of men realize this can they attain immortality. Now, wherever God is and He is everywhere, the possibility, the germ of development, of evolution, is present. And it is in this sense that it can be truly said, from the Truity to man, every atom is an epitome of the universe, having its correspondence with the sheaves or planes. Consciousness is inherent in substance, therefore embodied in the atom, which is the soul of the molecule. so that every molecule in the universe is able to feel and to obey after its kind, the inorganic as well as the organic. Perfect Way, page 122, Sir William Crookes protile, the withinness of his dual atom, is a prifivic Vayu sheaf of this synthesizing spiritual ray, the soul of every atom, of every created thing. It is for this reason that to sensitive souls, the souls awakened to the presence of the Spirit, the immanence of the God presence becomes in all the secret haunts of nature an abiding fact ever present to their consciousness. Therefore, these enlightened ones see more, hear more, feel more, and receive more from intimate association with nature than those average folk whose chief characteristics are their gregariousness, their obtuseness to blatant noise, and their love of excitement, often indeed, their acute horror of being alone. They are afraid of the mystery of life which in silence knocks on the door of consciousness, afraid because it has been clothed in terror when it should be radiant with beauty. Western science is today ably corroborating all that the ancient religions and wisdom have affirmed concerning this septenary chain of creation, of involution and evolution. The telescope has revealed that the great globe of Jupiter is divided into a series of concentric shells showing variations of motion and character. The eye is able to look through these varying planes, or spheres within spheres, and an ideal picture of the spectacle, drawn by Gerrit Service, curiously enough shows exactly 6 concentric rings surrounding the luminous central sphere. Now this central sphere is the home of the ruling Logoi, the soul of the planet, which rules its function and emanations and sounds its key. Our own Earth has its enveloping sheaves in like manner, and its radiant center, the higher ego. This is the glory clothing the hidden spirit, which is positive to all its sheaves but negative to its creator, life eternal. Our sun holds in synthesis all the planetary rays sending to everyone its own. The astronomical symbol of the Earth is a disk with a cross stretched from center to circumference. Has the deep significance of this ever occurred to you? It symbolizes the earth life of humanity, the soul crucified upon and within the 4 elements of the physical plane, earth, water, fire, and air, the stimulators of the senses and, through them, of desire. The ancient Hindu symbol called the svastika, really a world symbol, as it has been found everywhere, is a modification of the earth sign, and, explained exoterically, signifies manifested life coming out of the unmanifested. That is, the arms of the Greek cross bent at right angles symbolize the human soul on the wheel of life, held to its orbit by the circle, understood, of the spirit, the one and only source of all life. There is, however, a profounder symbology. The bent arms mark the soul's recognition of its oneness with spirit, and its determination to evolve out of the physical sheaves into synchronous vibration with the spiritual plane, hence into the state of spiritual consciousness. That is, to transform its cross into a crown. In all the oldest records, the cross was always within the circle, which symbolizes divine unity, time unending, and the omnipresence of the unrecognizable. You are familiar already with the fact that there are 7 descriptions of life currents corresponding with the planets, and it will not be difficult for you to understand that these 7 fundamental forces in nature are also 7 planes of being, which, as Madame Blavatsky explains very clearly, are 7 states of consciousness in which man can live, think, remember, and have his being. These different principles, sheaves, or bodies have received many names in the different religions and philosophies of both the ancient world and the modern, and have been variously classified as to order. Any attempt to enumerate all these and to reconcile them would make a book in itself. The significant fact is that these different states have been recognized in all religions and every philosophy worthy of the name. The Christian triad of body, soul, and spirit includes the whole septenary chain. But it has given currency to the common belief that man is only a triadic creature. So we speak of physical, mental, and spiritual selves. The analysis here given does not change the familiar classification, but goes further closer to the heart and truth of things, distinguishing other divisions, and showing how every principle or sheath influences and interpenetrates the others. The septenary constitution of humanity is symbolized by a triangle surmounting a cube or square. In the cube, we have the ultimate of manifestation, containing as it does the possibilities of all variety, of every form, of all expression. All the elements in one, being the actual form of Prithvi, the earth vibration. The cube represents the four different sheaves which make up the natural body of earth life. The two outer are the Sthula Sharira, or gross body, and the Sukshma Sharira, or subtle body, the etheric double, which is the prototype and shadow of the Sthula, being the form round which the physical body is built. And in some of its appearances it is called the astral body. The Sukshma Sharira is the vehicle of prana, which is transmuted through the astral spleen, and thus the life current unites the two bodies. The nodes vital in the throat and the pit of the stomach, so called, the great vagus nerve and the solar plexus, are the points of closest connection between these shariras, which explains the sensitiveness of these physical centers. The restoration of those who have been shocked by electricity or smothered by drowning is effected through such stimulation of these centers as restores connection between these bodies and thus recalls the ego to consciousness. This is the secret of the wonder-working katsu, resuscitation from apparent death, of the Japanese. The remaining sheaves of the quaternary are the desire body, or kama-rupa, the principle which uncontrolled gives physical man the most trouble, and the animal soul, or mind, lower monas. Madame Blavatsky describes the latter as the reflection or shadow of the buddhi monas, higher monas, but often conquered by kamic elements. She states further, there are enormous mysteries connected with lower monas. With regard to some intellectual giants, they are in somewhat the same condition as smaller men, for their higher ego is paralyzed. That is to say, their spiritual nature is atrophied. Secret Doctrine, Vol. 3, page 592. These sheaves of the quaternary correspond as enumerated with the tattvas from Prithvi to Vayu. The upper triad ascends through higher monas, higher ego, causal body, or Karana Sharira, various names for one sheath or principle, to buddhi, the soul, or spiritual sheath, and terminates with the auric egg, or Atma, the divine spirit. The seventh holds all the other sheaves in synthesis, but the lower member of the triad, as in all trinities, holds the two highest principles in synthesis and also, as the fifth from the lowest sharira, holds the lower quaternary in synthesis, and unites them to the higher. You have doubtless recognized this as the all-pervading akasha, the two higher principles, the duad of the upper triad, 6 to 7, pervade everything in nature from the mineral upwards. But only in man is the fifth principle found in an active state. It is the causal body, the beginning of individuality and consciousness, and marks the passage of the life from the beast to the human. The four lower principles are those in which, during earth life, the spirit is involved, and the three higher, those through which by ascent the soul accomplishes its evolution, earns its immortality. Do not think of these sheaves or planes as one above another, either in the universe or in man. All seven may be said to permeate all space, Their difference is a variation in form of manifestation of one and the same substance, eternal spirit. And this change in form is a change of velocity as well as change in combination of the primary simple tattvas. The change is best and most simply described as increasing density and decrease of velocity from the highest to the lowest, which must be understood also as from inner to outer, or counting upwards from the lower and outer, that is, the physical body. The sheaves grow more subtle, and the vibrations increase tremendously in velocity as they proceed from lowest to highest, from without to the radiant center of life. All these bodies change, deteriorate or improve, according to the materials we draw into them through our thoughts and emotions. The rays of the spirit radiate in every direction from the center to circumference, but the atoms of the separate sheaves are conditioned to the plane of their manifestation by the rates of their vibrations. These definite planes, or spheres, reflect one another as in a mirror, reflection proceeding downward and outward, every sheaf being receptive to the next higher and attracted to the next lower. But the spirit radiates outward throughout the sheaths. Thus the spirit is never in bondage to nature, even when working in and manipulating it. And the soul, the vehicle of the spirit, has but to recognize its power in order to utilize it and manifest its freedom. The light is always within, but whether we reveal or obscure it depends upon the density of our outer spheres, upon the character we are building for ourselves through our activities, tastes, and aims. Thus man must master these forces or be mastered by them. And his whole task in life is the transmutation of lower forces into higher, whereby he may develop the spiritual forces within and come into conscious recognition of his soul, his higher ego. What chiefly concerns us, then, is to gain consciousness on the spiritual plane. It is only a question of seeking the highest and compelling obedience from the horde of trivialities on the lower plane which commonly occupy our entire field of consciousness, holding us there with their insistent demands.